so why don't we take turns reading, and let's read chapter 9, verses 1 through 3. Who would like to read that? All right.
And God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. The fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth and upon every bird of the heavens, upon everything that creeps on the ground and on the fish of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. And as I gave you the green plants, I give you everything.
Okay. So what are you guys' observations?
So this is the first time that animals or flesh is given to them for food. Prior to this was just plants.
Right. And wonder why. Why is that?
I don't know. Why is that, Mom?
I don't know. Juan is that, Jim.
Yeah, we know.
It's like he started all over, and because what he is saying to Noah is what he said to Adam and Eve, right? Be fruitful and multiply.
Exactly.
And fill the earth.
That's good observation. Yeah.
So he's basically saying to Noah, it's like a do-over.
Yes.
Similar to Noah's story.
Yep.
Except he's not in the ark.
Right,
you just can't eat the blood.
I mean, yeah.
But now the meat or flesh is available for you to eat, whereas with Adam and Eve it was.
Right.
So is that a plus or a minus?
Well, carnivores would say, I would say it's a plus. Kind of nice to have some chicken.
Well, but then why not? Why not have it at the beginning when things were at their optimum?
Probably because everything they needed was right there in that garden.
Yeah.
Well, I guess Noah,
Well, until they messed it up.
Noah to be a good man.
Yeah, maybe 4 and 5 kind of maybe add something to, because you go from fruit, and if you think about it, fruit is the only one where you're not killing anything. You're just taking, and then once you get into plants, you got to kill the plant, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at the beginning, the fruit, and then you kind of maybe you digress to now plants. Once Adam and Eve are how do we say it? Booted out or not allowed to come back into the garden might be a better way to say it. And now they're cultivating, maybe doing plants. Not even, no, we talk about Cain. Cain can't even do that. The land won't even yield its. And now by time now we get to this point, and now it's meat. Now I'll give you all the food, right? So they're kind of moving up the scale of being a predatory animal, right? Now man is like he's gonna be a predator, but he's not. But there's like a limit on it. Like they're not to eat the blood.
But I noticed where he says the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth.
Now why is that?
Fear and the dread. So they are Noah of man is here, and the animals are here.
Yeah.
You are charge over them. You're not on equal footing
Yeah.
with them. You're not lower than them. You are.
Well, that was that way before in the garden, but now, that wasn't spoken like that. Now you're seeing fear.
You see in fear, it's like a progression. But also God is pronouncing this progression. So is it, I mean, because if you look at chapter 8, right before that, where Noah built an altar, and God smelled the soothing aroma, and then said he would never again curse the ground on account of man, for the intent of man's heart is evil
Mhm.
from his youth. I will never again destroy every living thing as I have done. So he he's destroying, he has destroyed. He's saying he will never do that again because of the sacrifice that Noah gave. He smelled it. It was pleasing to him. I'll never do that again, even though people are um, sinful from there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I know you're always going to be sinful, but I'll never do this again.
Yeah.
So now he's allowing them to eat, and I think maybe it's because there's going to be a covenant of blood, the blood of the covenant of the sacrifice. Perhaps that's like a setup for that.
I don't know about that, but what I will say is the fear and dread's kind of obvious, you could say, because now the animals know that man's coming for them.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so it could be simple as that, right? Because now you're gonna see man's gonna be predator. He's now gonna have meat to eat. I mean, you could be comical about it and saying, "Oh, it's kind of good." They would eat the plants. Now they're coming after us. but but what's interesting is when he says, "But you shall not eat flesh with its life, with the blood. That is its blood." So you could understand that as being that God is placing a limit so that we don't lose our minds, right? In other words, you're not to go nutsoid, right? You're to kill the meat to eat, the animal to eat, but you're not to have eat its blood. And the life's in the blood,
Could we
which does hearken
kind of
ahead to the sacrifices. You're
yeah,
right.
because I'm gonna
Yeah.
let's look up Acts 15, 28, 29. Who would like to look that up? And then Leviticus 17, 10 through 12. And then somebody, Isaiah 53, 10.
What's Acts 15?
Acts 15, 28 and 29. Leviticus 17, 10 through 12. Okay. And Isaiah 53, 10. Now, I looked up the word life in this scripture, and so this is what the lexicon says it. I just took some notes. It says, denotes the breath, the life, the soul, the spirit self, soul that continues to live by drawing breath. The vital principle that results in death when it leaves the body. So, this life, this breath is connected to the blood. There's a connection there with the life is in the blood, the soul is in the blood. So that's connected, and I believe that is kind of a good thing to know when we're thinking about the sacrifice of Jesus. Okay, so who has Acts 15, 28, 29?
It seemed good to the Holy Spirit and to us not to burden you with anything beyond the following requirements. You are to abstain from food sacrificed to idols, from blood from the meat of strangled animals, and from sexual immorality. You will do well to avoid these things.
Okay.
So that's the church at Jerusalem, um, instructing Gentiles, right? Because the argument was, hey, shouldn't we make these Gentiles to be circumcised? And they're saying no. And so we learned that fast forward thousands of years, and they're still telling the Gentiles not to eat the blood. So that's, in other words, that goes past even the Mosaic law, right?
Yeah, and here's the Mosaic law. Who has Leviticus 17, 10 and 12 through 12?
If any one of the house of Israel or of the strangers who sojourn among them eats any blood, I will set my face against that person who eats blood, and will cut him off from among his people. For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it for you on the altar to make atonement for your souls. For it is the blood that makes atonement by the life.
So kind of take note, we tend to think always the death. It's the death of the animal, right? That's what gives atonement, but yet the blood doesn't represent the death. The blood is the life. It's the life that God is after, not the death. And the life is what gives atonement, right? That's kind of we're starting to get on the good theology here. But anyway, that's important. That's isn't it fascinating that your life's in the blood, not to eat eat the blood.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Isaiah 53:10. Anybody have that one? Isaiah 53:10. And this is a prophecy about Jesus.
Okay, I'll read it. 53:10 says, "Yet it was the will of the Lord to crush him. He has put him to grief. When his soul makes an offering for guilt, he shall see his offspring. He shall prolong his days. The will of the Lord shall prosper in his hand."
Isaiah 53:10? That's not right.
Yeah, verse 10, 53. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, does anybody else have a different version?
Please the Lord to bruise him, yet put him to grief. When you make his soul an offering for sin, shall see his seed, and shall prolong his days.
Yeah, okay. So his soul is connected, the offering, which is the blood. So our soul is somehow connected to our blood. And it makes sense. One of the things that some of the religious, other satanic type cults drink blood, right? Because they're trying to get that life force. So that's just a little something there. All right, so we talked about it, but we didn't read it. And you shall not eat the flesh with its life; that is the blood. All right.
But you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is its blood. Yep.
Even though that life, that word life, if you look it up in the lexicon, it's talking about the soul, basically. So blood and the soul are somehow connected there. Anyway, let's read 5 and 6. Who wants to read verse 5 and 6 of chapter 9? You don't want to?
Well, can we talk a little bit more about so the flood happens, right? Everything goes to zero, starts over again. God is not just simply punishing; he's wiping out mankind that's wrecking his creation, and he's going to start over. And he starts over, and he gives Noah. He renews the covenant they made with Adam, right? To have dominion over the earth, over all the animals. Even though now man is fallen. In other words, it's one thing to give that covenant to Adam and Eve before they had fallen. In other words, you're to have dominion over my creation. You're to take care of it. You're to represent me in it. You are to over the animals, over everything. But he in other words, he hasn't rescinded it. So we still have that as us today, man today. So I could throw in a couple of questions in there. Number one, what does it mean in your mind for us to have dominion over God's creation? Two, is that just for the church or is it for all of mankind? Three, do you think that if it is for all of mankind, the church is really the only one that understands what God wants and how it wants to be done?
I think he means for us to take care of it.
fruitful and multiply also. Not lower the population.
So we got be fruitful and multiply. I think the Southerners have done a better job than the Northerners on that one. We like to crank children out. One of the things I'm very proud of. But yeah, okay, we're to be fruitful and multiply. Um, so what do we do with that? I mean, it's not so much anymore. For the longest while there, I kept hearing there's too many of us already. We need to kind of depopulate. Hmm.
And then you look around at all the empty land. There's plenty of land. Leastwise in this country.
And what do you think about when you see people building things? Would you understand that as being like humanity having God's image in them, doing God things, albeit very badly sometimes, right? Do you look can you look at it like that? Um, anyway, I find it fascinating to me the idea that God did not. You would think that God said, "Okay, I'm no, I'm taking the car keys away from you at Noah. I mean, you're alive, it's great, but you're not gonna have dominion like I gave to Adam and Eve. I gave that to them, and that went horribly wrong. No, we're gonna start over now, training wheels. No, he he gives the car keys to Noah and says, "You're driving now, you and your
Family.
family."
Into your hand they are given.
Hmm.
Well, he did a good job keeping them alive on the ark.
You know who else was kind of seemingly given that authority? Interestingly enough, too. How about King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon?
Yeah.
He was given similar, right? Interesting how he will give authority over to nations who are like, really? Yep.
Yeah. He
He-
does. He uses worldly people sometimes to do his will. Huh.
Well, it makes you think, okay, because imagine Israel. Now Nebuchadnezzar has this dominion. Israel was supposed to have it. Israel lost the car keys. God gives the car keys to Nebuchadnezzar. Habakkuk and some of the other prophets were kind of like, what? I know we're bad, but they're worse, right? But that makes us. And God even would tell Israel, "I want you to pray for the prosperity of any nation that you're in while you're under, subjugation. You're to pray for the prosperity of that particular nation." It makes sense for lots of reasons, including because you're going to be living in it and you want them to do well. Does that kind of help us understand? Because, sometimes it's like we see ourselves, well, if we're Christian, then we hate all things government, which is kind of like me.
Yeah.
But it makes you wonder how we're to approach that. I mean, if God is kind of given
Well,
dominion.
Romans tells us to pray,
Yeah.
right? That
Yeah.
we'll be able to live a peaceful life,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
To respect authority.
Mm-hmm.
And what's your all's take, and I like you. What's your all's take about the California tree huggers? Okay, and all those who've been very okay. How about the environmentalists? The ones who are very hardcore about the environment, climate change. Okay, what are we as Christians? How are we to look at that in view of the mandate, the covenant renewal over the dominion of the earth? How should we as Christians look at that?
Well, okay. God said in verse 22 of chapter 8, while the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. So I trust him in that. I don't need climate change people.
What do y'all think?
But Jim, this is the way gave us dominion over it. So we have a responsibility to take care of it, right? We don't need to abuse the world, but we got to live in the world, right? But so we, as in the environment, I think that a little bit extreme. It seems like every time you have something good, it just goes. It don't
Okay.
know when to
Yeah.
throttle down, right? You say
Yeah.
we made it,
Yeah.
women's right might be exact. I think it was very, very well needed, but it doesn't have no. Okay, we're doing a lot better, but it just keeps going, and I think it's gone down the wrong road.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So the environmentalist, I think is really good. To a certain point, I am.
Yeah.
Especially California redwoods. Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
But I think that some people, well, it's a forest. We could burn it. No, just slow it down. Yeah,
Yeah.
this would treat the world. We 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 have only one option, and we can't go anywhere else. We gotta live here. You know what I mean? So just
A balance.
It's a balance. Thank you. Thank you.
So they got the right idea, maybe wrong application.
Right.
And that's another typical what happens with us is because of our sinful inclination, we tend to take even good ideas and somebody runs it. We tend to like run it amok. And I think it's important because reason why I bring this up is just because sometimes, and it works both ways. Whatever the left comes up with, the right says, no, we're the opposite, without really even thinking, right? And vice versa. And so we might say that, hey, climate change, okay, they've got the right idea, and we are to be good stewards, as you brought up, of God's creation. What would you guys say to an older, the younger generation is not so much like this at all, but the older generation with rapture, the rapture view is that, well, God's taking us out of here. He's pulling us out of creation, and he's going to blow creation up. So what's the point? Just let it all burn, baby, burn. I'm not. That was. What do you think about that? I mean, that is what will, if you're a rapture, if you believe in the rapture, that is one of the accusations that other churches will make towards us, is that because of our view that God's saving us out of creation, creation is that's kind of bad. Yeah, I know, God, you created it, but we're all going to heaven, and you're just going to basically nuke the earth, and which is not true. We read Revelation 21:22. So why care about it?
Because God created it. You respect what God
Okay.
created. He created us.
Yeah, that's right.
This world. So if you're just blatantly disrespecting the world, I think it's wrong. Really.
And that's a good point. Maybe some people even we look at ourselves. Well, I'm getting a new body anyway, so let's go ahead and pork this one out.
But isn't there some scripture saying to treat your body good?
I would, yeah.
Yes.
Yes. So, okay.
I think that's an argument.
Yeah.
Right.
These are good things to think through. We don't think much upon creation, but it's God's beautiful creation.
Well, the environmental extremists do so at the expense of man.
You're right.
And
Yeah.
that's wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
That's just flat out wrong.
Yeah.
God created
That's not a good balance, is it?
No, God created the earth, and then he created man to be able to enjoy and take care of the earth. It does not mean at the expense of man.
Yeah.
Right.
I want to hit on. That's a good point.
That's a good point.
A really good point. And that goes to they're gluing themselves to the road sometimes, literally gluing their body to the road.
Yeah. See, and this is where we as Christians can help. In other words, help because yes, what a lot of the environmental movement is that they look at man as being the chief problem. So they kind of put everything at an even playing field, and they go, well, man's the problem, to the point where really, and we kind of contribute in a way, because dogs are on the upswing, children are down. A lot of people would rather have a dog than a child. And if mankind were taken off the earth, creation would be better. Well, we would say, and particularly if you look at Romans 8, you can't have the creation without us. We can even laugh and say, for better or for worse, right? The creation, when it is waiting for the children of God to receive the redemption, right?
That's so heavy.
Yeah.
So explain that exactly. You're saying that. Think of what you're trying to say is we should not try to kill ourselves or be less because that's wrong.
Right. In other words, creation, we were always made to be stewards of creation. So creation can't get along without us. Kind of like heaven and earth. We look at heaven, earth. Heaven and earth were made for each other. They were at one time, they were one. Sin separated. God's bringing it all back together. If I can just, I'll read this scripture to you, and it'll say better than how I said it. For we know that the whole creation has been groaning together in the pains of childbirth until now. And not only the creation, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly uh, as we wait eagerly for adoption as sons, the redemption of our bodies. Now, let me go up a little bit. I'm sorry. For the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. That's us. In other words, it's waiting. Creation can't do its thing until we get our thing. Right? That makes sense? We were kind of made for each other. So, for the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. Heavy kind of Paul talking there. See, that's the idea. In other words,
So everything
yeah.
is on our shoulders, basically. Creation's just waiting for us to get for for the church to be fulfilled completely.
I would add, I wouldn't say quite like, I would say that God's, it's waiting on God. God is going to, when we receive our resurrection bodies, when we are all that God has created us to
There
be,
we go. That's a better
right?
way to put it.
It
Yeah.
then creation then comes into its own. So what we'd say to the environmentalists is say, look, I get it. You think that if we're all just Fido dogs, it'd be better, but no, it can't happen like that, right? We are the stewards of creation. So what we're seeing is that God, from the very beginning with Adam and Eve, God is not giving up on any of that. It just means that, okay, we're going to take a long road. And Noah's the next stop, okay? We're going to start over again with Noah, and we're going to see that that's not going to go either.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, Lynn. I
That's
wanted,
okay.
I wanted
That
to
was
get that
good.
part of it because that was
No, that was good.
yeah, that's,
Okay, we're going to read verses 5 and 6. We want to talk about when we talked about Cain, we talked about how gracious God was to Cain, that he didn't kill him for killing his brother. So let's compare that to what we're reading here, and what do we think about it now? Right? I'll go ahead and read it. It says, and surely I will require your lifeblood. From every beast I will require it. From every man and from every man's brother I will require the life of man. Whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed. For in the image of God he made man.
and you be fruitful and multiply, increase greatly on the
And
earth.
then he says it again. He
Multiply,
reiterates
yeah.
that.
And don't murder anybody.
Yeah, don't kill anybody. Well, I want you to multiply. But what do we think?
Not subtract, add.
Yeah.
Going the wrong way.
What's your thoughts now about capital punishment? We talked about, how gracious God was to Cain. Even Cain killed his brother. God didn't kill him. But here we have God saying, um, whoever kills a man, his life is required. So what do you think?
He also will require it from every beast.
Yeah.
And from
Yeah.
every beast I will require.
Yeah. And when we get to the law, right? If you happen to have a bull and it you didn't know it, and he just kind of went off his rocker and killed someone, I think you would have to, I forget what the restitution have to be. But if you knew that bull had an attitude and it whacks your neighbor, well then you get whacked.
That's right. You're responsible.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Responsible for it.
Yeah.
Because basically you've used that as a weapon, or you've allowed it to. Your animal will be stoned to death, and so will you.
Mm-hmm.
But you notice, like, no, a life that's taken, it's so precious, right? And when the blood, remember the blood poured it to the ground, and God said, I hear, right? Abel's blood's crying out to be from the ground. That had to be dealt with, right?
Evidently, it's too much of that going on.
Yeah.
In Noah's time before the flood,
Yeah.
and he wanted to make sure it was not.
Which we know it will.
It will.
But and so in other words, you start seeing, okay, so murder can happen. And we'll learn, go through the Bible that, well, you look at all the firstborn that were taken in Egypt, right? And all the firstborn were the Egyptians killed. Makes you wonder, is that why the firstborn was taken in Egypt when they left? And there's like this balance. And when too much bloodshed, innocent blood, remember Jesus, he said, this is Jerusalem. All the innocent blood shed from you, the prophets, from Abel on, will come on this generation. God does not forget. So there's something about the blood when it's shed. I'm leading all this up because you think of all the innocent blood that's shed in our country.
Mm. Wasn't it somebody in the Old Testament where God actually comes and talks to him and says, "You're a good person, but it's too much bloodshed you've done." Who was
David.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you're a good guy.
Too much.
But you just too much blood.
Too much bloodshed. The war. Yes, that's kind of striking. And so right here, he's telling Noah that responsibility is going to be you. But it's striking. I mean, I think of abortion. I think of various how flippant we are, even with the animals too. I mean, yeah. See, the world the world doesn't understand these things because we're far away from God. So this is why the church, we need to be impressed upon our hearts how God, how He thinks, and blood, and how precious it is, right? Even when we eat, we're not to eat the blood. The life's in it. And
But there is a big difference between murder and capital punishment. There is a difference. I once
Mm-hmm.
won a debate, and I actually was on the opposite side of what I believed. I was a good enough debater that I won the debate.
Wow.
And it had to do with capital punishment.
but do we know the difference?
Well, under the law, because the state is murdering that person.
Well,
Murder is with malice.
but I don't mean that. Yeah, but well, you could be, the state could be a lot of malice.
That is the definition of murder. Malice aforethought.
But who's defining murder? Who defines murder?
The state.
No, God.
Right, but what I'm saying is today the state has defined murder as killing with malice aforethought.
I know, but what I'm saying is that
God taking of life.
no, what I'm getting at is that and I think I'm not saying there's not a place for capital punishment, but just because the state decides it, we as Christians may have a different take. And I hear
Well,
a
if somebody kills someone, murder, God says you're supposed to lose your life too.
except that okay, but if we just took that and then ran with it, then how do we explain Cain?
Yeah, good question.
Right? God, Cain was a perfect candidate to wipe out. In fact, Cain was consummate sinner.
God had his reasons.
Yeah.
It doesn't
And there's
explain
another
Jesus.
situation in Kings where I think it's Arab was told to kill certain people. He let them live.
Yeah.
He paid
He
his
did.
life
Yeah, for
because
doing
he
it.
didn't
Yeah.
kill.
Yeah.
So that's
I told you to let
But
I told you.
also,
Yeah.
but also, just as things have gotten worse, and now we have meat as food. Okay, so a lot, maybe the same thing happened with the amount of murders and things that were going on, and God is like, okay, now we have to put a stop to it. It could be different, just like with the food was different. Now I have to put my foot down because I have too much of this going on. We have to.
Well,
Here's
there can't be anything going on right now because it's just the family. But what I
but there was.
but what I would say though, lots
You
of
know what I'm
different
saying?
ways to look at, it, and I'm not disagreeing with that. I guess what I'm getting at is one, God could be also giving that as a commandment to impress upon people just how valuable life is. Like for instance, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. We tend to look at that as okay, you mess with me, I mess with you. No, it's supposed to be the opposite. It's put the hedge on it because what usually happens is that if money hits me, I want to hit him twice. It ain't good enough to be even. I want to be one up. And I guess I would say one of the pushbacks I'm kind of given to how we view capital punishment is that we're looking to murder people. In other words, we anybody who does this, I want to. People say things like, we got some people in our prison. Let's start axing them. It costs a lot of money to like keep it in, and it does. We need to just axe them. We need to axe them. And so my thing would be is I'd be pumping the brakes on that. I'm not saying that capital punishment should never be. I'm just saying I'm weighing the other side. And that's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah, because Paul even says, and I think it's in Acts, if I have done anything that is deserving of being put to death, then so be it. So he's acknowledging that there are certain acts that you would deem worthy of being put to death. But he said, I do what I have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a controversial, probably one of the most controversial subjects.
I think there was a lot of murder going on, and so therefore God was saying,
Yeah.
okay, now we're starting over. Here's what's going to happen if you do that.
Well, see, I don't. I mean, I think it's for the future, but my point is I think I think God is really trying to impress the value of a life. And that's the most important thing. And so I'm not disagreeing at all with the capital punishment. I just think that I think that's what's paramount. And something has to be done about it. Right? In other words, that's why you have these kind of laws. Hopefully, you would think that when we put the laws out, what we're hoping is it scares you enough that you don't want to do it. Right? You're going to get 10 years if you steal this. Right? You're hoping. Will that scare you? Keep that's what you hope.
Yeah, yeah.
And so anyway, or if you just kind of took that like how maybe some people would. Well, okay, if you murder someone, all right, we kill you. You have a lot of people who are being killed.
Well, we'd have a lot less people wanting to murder other people, though. They knew that automatically they were going to die as a result of it.
Well, that was kind of the argument given to me about incarcerating people. And we have more prisons than anybody. We incarcerate more people than anybody, and we still So I even question that thinking. I get it, and I'm not. I just I guess maybe there's no real hard fast rule. Maybe what's really coming down to, and what we Christians would say, we need laws. So even capital. We need those, kind of like you need to put a lion in a cage. You need a cage for a lion. You need the bars. But we also know that is not going to make the lion tame. Bars don't make a lion tame.
No,
You got to change his heart,
that's so heavy.
right? And so we Christians would say, look, we got these laws up here because, we lose our minds too much. But really, society, you need Jesus to change your heart, right?
Yeah.
That's the only way this works, because if we have to keep arresting you and killing you for killing others, we're
Yeah.
really in a bad way.
That
Yeah, yeah.
lion will never get tamed no matter how long it stays behind the
No,
wheel.
the bars can't tame no lion.
No,
No, yeah,
or mankind, I guess, huh?
same way. Bars will yeah.
Well,
They could help. They could help, but they just don't. Yeah.
I just think it's the breakdown of the family and the corruption, and
Yeah.
we're just seeing the results of it. If the family wasn't so broke down, you know, and we're heading down this direction, and we're just getting worse and worse. You know what I mean? In the
Yeah.
50s, it wasn't so bad, but I
Yeah.
didn't think we had as that much corruption, right? So percentage, what you said, the percentage is going up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I
Every year.
and I know I'm harp on this a little bit. I'll just say this. So I know I'm in a group of good conservative people, and conservative people, they don't mind, and rightfully so, to have laws and capital punishment. I feel that sometimes, though, we get overzealous on that, and we don't really stop and think about the implications. If I was in a group of all liberals who, like, just love them, I'd go, justice. We need justice, right? Sometimes you've got to do the hard thing, and I would be going the other way. I tend to play the other side. So that's why I'm not necessarily disagreeing.
Yeah, we certainly do need laws.
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
how do you have anarchy?
Yes.
Well, I'm going to do this. Well, because
Yeah.
there's no law
Yeah.
against it.
But yeah,
Basically rules.
it is striking that God's anticipating that you know that bloodshed's going to happen, and God is saying that cannot just go. That has to be dealt with, life for a life. Which, as you point out, that also it's preparing us for the law.
So why did he deal with Cain the way he did?
Yeah. Yeah. As a matter of fact, he basically, Cain was worried that they're going to come. So in other words, there was this kind of there was a law already.
Protecting him in a weird way.
There was a law already in place among the people to teach them. You mess with my family, I'm coming for
Well,
you.
Oh, yeah.
Cain asked God directly for mercy.
Yeah.
Maybe,
He said, if
maybe,
you send over there, he said, they're going to kill me.
maybe
they are.
God,
I will put a
because
mark
He's
on you, so they
merciful.
won't.
Maybe
He's a
that's
merciful God.
now. See,
So
that does kind of go along with what I'm saying. In that, okay, we just learned something. In the day of Cain, before this, there was an unwritten rule. You know, you kill one of ours, we're coming for you. So that's not good neither. That's kind of vigilante. So maybe God is like putting the government in there. Look, you to stop it. In other words, because if you don't have these laws, life for a life, what to prevent? Like we said, usually no. If Monty kills one of my kids, oh no, it's not even. I'm taking out the whole family of Monty. See, and then Monty's next kin. Oh, Jim does that, huh? And then he wipes. You see what I'm saying? You have like the Hatfields and McCoys. So you have a law here, like no, this will be, and we're gonna make it.
Just look at what David said about Nabal, right? You didn't,
Yeah,
you were not, my man went, you just wanted some food, and we took care of you, and you wouldn't give it, so I'm going to wipe out
Yeah.
every single male.
yeah.
Every single one. David, no.
Talk the hothead down.
I think so.
Talk the hotheads off of just blowing everything up.
Take a deep breath.
Yeah.
He's going to wipe out every single male. And he said
Yeah,
there will
yeah.
not be a male standing after I
Mhm.
get through.
Yeah.
David, it was just because he wouldn't give you any food?
Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood. Yeah. Yeah.
That's why God said that there's been too much
Yeah.
bloodshed for you, David.
All right, shall we move on?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm sorry,
let's
we were
read
trying to get off script.
8 through 17. Who would like to do that?
Then God said to Noah and his sons with him, understand that I am establishing my covenant with you, your descendants after you, and with every living creature that is with you, birds, livestock, and all wildlife of the earth that are with you, all the animals of the earth that came out of the ark. I establish my covenant with you that never again will every creature be wiped out by floodwaters. There will never again be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, this is the sign of the covenant I am making between me and you and every living creature with you, a covenant for all future generations. I have placed my bow in the clouds, and it will be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Whenever I form clouds over the earth and the bow appears in the clouds, I will remember my covenant between me and you and all the living creatures. Water will never again become a flood to destroy every creature. The bow will be in the clouds, and I will look at it and remember the permanent covenant between God and all the living creatures of the earth.
All right, one more. And God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant which I have established between me and all the flesh that is on the earth. Did you read that part?
I thought you said 16. That's why I stopped.
Oh, okay. But it sounded almost like I was repeating something you already read.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Jim told me last week, said, Mom, there was a rainbow that ended in your backyard. And Jim and I went up there digging for that pot of gold. We never found the rainbow.
So, so, what are you guys' observations there? Observations.
One observation. My Bible says bow.
Yeah, mine does
What
too.
y'all say? Yours says
Yep.
bow?
Yeah.
Which is pretty awesome. Every time you see a rainbow, that God said he'll never, that's his covenant. He will never
Who's this
again.
covenant with?
Mankind, I believe.
Man and animals.
And every living creature that is on the earth. So isn't that awesome? It's like God's making a covenant even with the animals, with us and with the animals. And he's making the covenant, and there's really nothing for us to do, right? Usually a covenant is between two people and they agree, right? So would this be the first covenant between man and God, where God did the only covenant?
No, and a covenant too.
The
It
first
isn't like
covenant.
even. It's like it's kind of like, okay, like a syllabus. You want a teacher gives you a syllabus. It's not like you get to haggle with the teacher. I think we should do this. That no. Basically, that syllabus is okay. This is what's going to be happen. This is what's going to go on. This is what's expected. So that's kind of.
Okay. But is this the first one? Is this the first covenant between God and?
I'm trying to think of what the first language. I'm thinking marriage was a covenant,
Okay.
and I'm thinking that even I
No,
thought
between God and people. I mean, is this the first covenant between God and people?
Actually, every living creature, right?
Yeah.
yeah, and the earth, yeah, it's just like
All
yeah,
living creatures.
But is it the first one? I just because they said that there's a rule of firsts
Mm-hmm. That's the first time the covenant is.
where
Good
God,
question. Yeah.
God made the covenant with
Yeah.
Abraham.
Yeah.
God is making covenants
Mm-hmm.
where He's the only one that can fulfill it. We
Right.
can't.
Right.
And so He's saying, "I'll do this."
What's interesting
But
to
He's
me
not
is
requiring any
a
faithfulness.
couple of things. First, bow. When you think of bow, what do you think of? Nice, huh? Like a bow and arrow. So
Which is our
that's how most people think the bow and the gift, but a bow and arrow, arc. So then when he sees the bow, it's like his bow is laid down as in peace. No war, right? That bow gets taken up, we're in trouble. But interesting too is like, so how come he goes, uh, never again will I flood the earth? And it is kind of funny because now they say we're to get blasted with comments or whatever, but so we can, but no flood.
Well, here's that word remembered. Like, okay, remember verse 1 of chapter 8. God remembered Noah. And then we have like God remembered Rachel. God remembered.
Yes.
Here we have that word again.
Yeah.
And the bow will be a reminder to God where He'll remember.
Right.
He'll
Right.
put His thoughts toward His covenant with
Mhm.
us. With that.
It's interesting that in some traditions you have alternating judgments: water, fire, water, fire. And when you get to the end of the Bible, of course, fire, judgment, fire, no flood. This will be interesting because when we get to the Tower of Babel, he's just going, God is going to, well, I promise I ain't going to flood your whole house.
But it's good that you see when the bow is in the clouds, I will see it and remember
Yeah.
the everlasting covenant of God in every year.
So we know He doesn't forget.
No, of course.
Yeah, but it
Yeah.
does.
Letting us know. I will every time I see that bow, I will remember I made that promise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
He's willing to commit himself before he even asks us to commit anything.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know,
Can you imagine that you see a rainbow and just to think God could be looking at that rainbow while you're looking at it?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And he thought, I guess he looks at rainbows. Isn't that wild?
Yes.
Hmm.
When we read that, I didn't know that.
if you go to Ireland, there's a rainbow all the time.
Yeah, the clouds
They're
are really low.
everywhere.
Wow.
With the
know
rain
that.
blowing,
That's
you
cool.
just look up
We
almost
saw
any
them
time.
every day.
Hawaii's like that too.
Is it really?
Kauai, you could be driving down the road and there'd be like 5 rainbows all around you. Almost, you look like you could just reach out and touch them. They're so close.
And that's kind of like paradise, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful. Yeah.
It's awesome. Okay, well, I'm going to have us read Leviticus 20:11 before we finish this chapter out, because I think it'll make it interesting. 20:11.
Are you sure you mean?
Yes, Leviticus 20, verse 11. Who wants to read it? Got it?
Yeah.
Okay.
If a man lies with his father's wife, he has uncovered his father's nakedness. Both of them shall surely be put to death. Their blood is upon the man.
Okay. So keep that in mind
Okay.
as we finish out the chapter, verses 18 through, well, we'll go 18 through 27, then we'll finish the last 2 verses after that. Does anybody want to read it? Or you want me to read it? I'll read it. You guys tell me what. Now the sons of Noah who came out of the ark were Shem and Ham and Japheth. And Ham was the father of Canaan. These three were the sons of Noah, and from these the whole earth was populated. Then Noah began farming and planted a vineyard, and he drank the wine and became drunk and uncovered himself in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. But Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it upon both of their shoulders and walked backward and covered the nakedness of their father, and their faces were turned away so that they did not see their father's nakedness. When Noah awoke from his wine, he knew that his youngest son had done what his youngest son had done to him, and he said, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants he shall be to his brothers," and also said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant." There we go. And we'll leave it at that. So what happened here?
Yeah, that's a good observation, which is kind of odd. It's like, what did Canaan do? Right? It's poor Cam. He's the one who did it. Huh. Okay. And we see that Ham. So basically, if we just read at face value, Noah gets drunk, too much Mad Dog 2020, takes his clothes off, lays out. Ham sees him naked, embarrassing. Ham comes out, tells his brothers, "Guess what I just saw?" Whoa, I can't unsee what I just saw. And the brothers are just like, "Oh no!" They walk backwards, they cover him up, and then Noah gets up and curses Canaan, the grandson, right? And that's kind of weird. And like, if I'm not mistaken, I think this was going to happen anyway. I think in the pecking order, he would have been a servant to the others anyway. So unless something else is going on here, right?
Well, why would Shem and Ham need to do anything if that's what was going on? They could have just left it be, right? They didn't need to go in and cover him because they could have just stayed outside and forgot about it. Nobody else was going to see him anyway, right?
Servant went in there to do something.
Somebody else could have
Somebody else
been
did.
But what servant? There was only the family members there.
But still, like, what's the problem of seeing, seeing dad naked? Unless, see, that this is a problem we have. What's going on? So some have said maybe Ham did something gross to dad. In other words, kind of like a homosexual act. No, not much there, I don't think. Another, this is why, this is a, make sure you do parental guidance on this one, Monty. The other one could be, again, if a son wants to usurp dad's kind of, how would you say it, authority, castrate him, cut off his ability to make sons, and then you, right? There is, there actually, if you read, if you read some of the mythological gods, that's what the son always did to the father. Yeah, this, yes, but Linda we read that in Leviticus. This could be a euphemism, right? Where when you uncover the father's nakedness, you slept with the wife, right? But it says, right? Don't be sleep with the wife and uncover your father's nakedness. We'll see that Reuben will do this later on in Genesis. Reuben will go into the bedroom, if you will, of Jacob, his dad, and slept with one of his concubines as a way to try. Cause that's how you usurp authority and kind of put yourself at the top. He
So did
blew
David's son.
he blew that, and Absalom did a similar thing, right? So what makes sense, especially with the Canaan, is that yes, that's right. Ham goes in and sleeps with his mom and impregnates her with grandson Canaan, and that
It also sounds like you might read in there that he was making snide remarks to the brothers. You're not going to believe what I just saw or did.
well, why curse Canaan? That's the odd part. Like why? But this makes this kind of like really raises the grievance level up a whole lot. This is something that has been known to happen.
Well, but Canaan is his grandson is now his Noah's wife's son.
I get
You know
those.
what I'm
I get the
saying?
family lineage messed up
So
anyway. This would be too much for me. I can't do that.
yeah.
It was bad.
It was his grandfather and his son.
Yeah. I had my own grandpa.
It was his
Yeah.
stepfather. It was his stepfather and his grandfather.
Goes into Smoky Mountains. That was so funny.
Yeah.
They did really weird things back then.
Yeah.
Kind of like those lines. Remember Lot and the daughter
Yes.
sleeping with
Yes.
that? That was weird.
Yeah.
So something like that would not be totally.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Well,
Yeah.
especially because they came out of the culture where people were marrying
Sisters
and people within the family.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, that's right, because it's hard for us to imagine. Man, in the culture back then, having children was everything. That was it. I mean, that's what a man. Okay, that's why, like when you remember in Abraham, right? When Abraham's servant, right, was to make a pledge, right? When remember he's gonna send a servant out to find it was Abraham sending his servant out to find a wife for Isaac. He puts his hands right on the family jewels of Abraham, because your family jewels as a man, that was everything. Forget Bitcoin, forget money, forget Teslas. It was your family jewels, because that is how you produce children. And you lots, right? So when you made a cut, that's what you swore by.
For real.
So yeah. So it was big. It was that
with
your ability to produce children.
The actual laws of who was allowed to marry who was allowed to have relationships with who, what didn't start until Leviticus, right?
Yeah.
So that's not until the law came in is when God started separating families. You can't marry your sister. You can't marry your aunt or your whatever.
What else about Canaan sticks out to you?
The name Canaan.
The land, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're finding out. So the land has an auspicious beginning, because Ham, of course, he will be the father of quite a few, including Cush. Cush was the father of Nimrod, right? Canaan and all the ites, right? The Hivites, the
Jebusites.
termites, Jebusites, ites, and also infamous Egypt, right? Not to say, here's what we got to think it through, because I guess there was evidently an older teaching that when Ham and Canaan were cursed, their skin was turned black, and that's why God cursed the black people. True story. That's where a lot of the racism came from. Every time I hear like a study, that's always brought up. Chill out on that. It's not true. But yes. But in any case, we could see Canaan. We'll see when we get to chapter 10, the Table of Nations. You start looking at the sons of Ham. Oh, that's a list of who's who, right? Of course, with Nimrod, of course, he coming from that line as well. You got he founded Babylon, Nineveh, all of the arch enemies of
So basically,
Israel.
like Cain and Abel, Cain was the bad son. Yeah, and now we have um, Ham, which is the bad seed, and his line is going to follow his footsteps.
And kind of going to what Monty was bringing about family, even though they didn't have like nuclear families like what we have, it was way different. But still, here we go. It seems like the enemy is targeting family. Yeah. Anyway, this was like a. Anyway, it is given so much speculation. What I talked about, what was going on, but it's kind of hard. Something happened here for Noah to outright
Curse his grandson.
curse his grandson. And oh, by the way, blessings and curses are taken seriously in the Bible. You notice that?
Yes.
Very serious. And
That's why we have to be very careful about what we say. We complain about someone, or we, just make a flippant remark about somebody's, um, who they are or how they act or whatever. We need to take that serious, in my opinion.
yeah,
That
Well,
we
it's
don't
all
just
through
flippantly.
all through Psalms, it talks about how the tongue
yes,
can tame it, right?
yes,
Yeah.
James.
It's a,
Yeah.
it,
James.
yeah,
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 James, yeah. James is really strong on
Tongue.
that.
yeah.
It's the smallest body part, but it can do more damage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, David, like you said, David will talk a lot in the Psalms. And we talk about all the enemies that are after him. And he always mentions what they're saying. They're saying this, they're saying that. Lord, strike them down. They're always talking trash. They kiss up to me when they're around me, but behind my back, they're saying. Yes, that was big. Words are big.
Yeah. And I have to say, you men are really hard on each other. You talk a lot of smack about each other.
Do we?
Yes, you do.
I'll say, like, I'll go
Yeah,
like, Monty,
you do.
Monty, you suck. That's
You
a
need to
good.
quit.
That's a good thing
You
I'm
need
saying.
to quit. You need to quit that.
Well, I say the pen is mightier than the sword, and of course the pen, basically the tongue, is mightier than the sword. You can cut a person to ribbons with your tongue.
Yeah.
And you can't do as much damage. The sword will kill a person
Yeah.
physically. With the tongue, you can ruin that person's life, literally.
And it's interesting because remember when we were kids, they used to give us that nursery rhyme: sticks and stones could break my bones, but names will never hurt me. I was about 8 years of school. I'm going, who said that? I think I'm gonna talk with them.
Oh, Richard was a big bully.
So true.
Yeah, he was a big bully.
Yeah, yeah. Did you have anything else on that one?
Well, we just have two more verses.
Okay.
Verse 28, 29. And Noah lived 350 years after the flood. So all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died.
And he died.
That's the refrain, huh? Over and over. And he died.
Except Enoch. He didn't die.
So what do you think Moses the writer? So again, Noah ends. He starts off awesome. Awesome. He becomes a farmer.
Well, first thing he did
Yeah.
was plant a vineyard.
And he plants a
Get
vineyard.
off the boat and plant a vineyard.
Yeah.
And and then it ends with him.
He slaughtered thing for God.
Yes, he made an
An
altar.
offering for God first. That's the first thing he did.
Yeah. Yeah, see, we had a lot of good. So, in other words, of all the things, is he trying to tell us, is Moses trying to tell us, because of all the things, you'd hope, like, okay, I've done a lot of things later in my life. I hope Linda does remember those. At the funeral, I said, speak truth about me, Linda. But that means but try to end at the end of the funeral, end on a happy note. No, he ends with him getting
You know what
drunk.
I think it's interesting because you know that he didn't just plant that vineyard, it grew in one day, and then he got drunk. So there was some time
Sure.
here.
Yes.
There's time in between all of that. And so whenever you're looking at the story about his grandson Canaan and all that, you can realize that it wasn't like something that just happened maybe in one day.
No.
Yeah.
It could have
No.
been like, well, the baby was
several
born,
years.
and then
They
you,
don't bloom that first. You don't have grapes.
Right.
right,
Right.
exactly. So there was some time in between all of this and some things going on, and that we don't have all the details. We just
Yeah.
have kind of like the
Yeah.
highlights.
That's,
Yeah, because we lived 350 years afterwards. So there's
Right.
and reading the Bible is pretty neat in the Old Testament. You read because you read certain things, and then you read, well, like you just said, had a baby. Well, we know how long that takes.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
you get some ideas of timelines.
Yeah.
But sometimes they'll jump.
Yeah.
hundreds.
Yeah. It's not where when we write a history,
Yeah.
we look for it. We want like, okay, blow by blow, right? This, then this, then this, and then if somebody gets something out of order, oh no. But in the Bible, no, they're not. It's not interested in that. It's
Kings too.
yes.
Second Kings does that, and it will change. I think we talked about that. Well,
Yeah.
the prophets got reversed.
Yep.
Sometimes.
Sometimes, and look at Matthew. He was more concerned about that the generations 14, 14, and 14, the numbers worked out right. That he wasn't getting every name in there. He left certain.
So we have the information God wanted us to have. We don't have all the details that we wonder about, but we have enough to get the idea.
Well, because it's the idea. In other words, exactly. They're not here. I'm not giving you a blow by blow description of history.
Right.
There's events you're getting here. You get the big picture of right. So what's he getting at with Noah? It seemed like, well, we're already getting an idea. In other words, what we keep, we're all right. Adam and Eve. This is awesome. Go south, right? Okay, then Cain and Abel. Oh, south. Seth, south. Now Noah. Now we can, south.
Why do you think it went south with Noah? I don't get that.
Well,
His sons went south.
Well, but the thing is, we're seeing whether you want to, make something out of him being drunk, but what we're seeing is, look what's happening. It's well, we got curses being thrown out.
Yeah.
That's telling you that, we're not this again.
Yeah.
And by the time we get to chapter 11,
Big one to me is Solomon.
yeah,
Not happy. He had the world
yeah.
talking to God.
Well, look at Matt. I'm glad you brought that up, Matt. Look at all the kings, and even the good ones. Notice how almost all of them end bad. They don't, right?
Well, Hezekiah, I think he's the one
The,
oh, it's going to work out good for me. Now my kids are going to have to pay for it, but I'm going to